It's a minimum
We
thing.
in 6 countries. That's what I mean.
Yes.
So that's the thing that stands out to me.
Shout out to everybody. Shout out to everybody. We love y'all.
Yes. Thank y'all for listening.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the channel. I'm Coach Deb, representing one half of the Healing Corner podcast. If you're interested in booking a consultation as well as service or a reading, go ahead and check me out at debshealingcornerstone.com.
I'm Coach Yams, owner of Healing is Work Coaching, and I help millennial professional women to live on purpose unapologetically and to help them to stop doing shit out of obligation. If you need help with that, reach out to me, Coach Yams, YAMZ.com. Hello, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Healing Corner podcast. I am Coach Yams. I have my co-host here with me, Coach Deb, and we have a guest here with us today. His name is Kenon, and this is October, so we are still talking about finances, financial health, financial wellness. Today's title of our episode is Money Moves: How to Win the Financial Wellness Game. And just to give an introduction of our guest, Kenon, Kenon is a versatile professional with expertise in mathematics, computer science, music, finance, and business consulting. A 2003 Vanderbilt graduate, he started his career in IT and by 2011 was leading technical sales and strategy for a Fortune 500 company. In 2017, Kenon founded KDT and Associates, a consulting firm focused on creating innovative technical solutions and offering financial literacy guidance. Specializing in data modeling, investment portfolio management, and budgeting, Kenon uses automation tools to optimize business efficiency. His passion for leveraging technology to solve challenges makes him a trusted leader in his field. Kenon, thank you for being here.
Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm very excited and looking forward to the conversation.
Yes. So, just to get right into a thing, you started with IT and now you are here in this financial space. Tell us how you got to here.
So, when I was in IT, I was administrator for about 9, 10 years, and for those that don't know, those are the individual contributors, right? So, like, if a website was down where I was working, they would call me, "Hey, the website's down." I would get the website back up. Uh, uh, while I was doing that, a number of salespeople for big technology companies, they come in and they tell you about their technology to try and help accelerate some of the things and initiatives that you would have internally. And I heard very consistently, "Hey, you be good at this technical sales stuff." So after about 10 years of being an administrator, I switched over to technical sales and started working for the Fortune 500 company. And that's where I started to see big sums of money transferring hands very, very quickly. I'm like, because when you're doing technical sales, it's not a thing for somebody to spend 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, even $100 million, some of these big companies. So it kind of reshaped my idea on what a lot of money meant. Because all of a sudden, $1 million don't seem like that much when you got customers that are spending $1 million every couple of days to buy technical solutions. So I started looking internal to my finances on how I can maximize and uh, accelerate some of the financial goals that I had in my life. And so I started doing a lot of studying on taxes, um, wealth accumulation, interest rates, investing, business management. And the good thing about learning is once you learn a thing, you know a thing. And so it just kind of built upon itself over the course of the last 6, 7 years, to where I've started realizing that a lot of people don't have just what I would consider fundamental knowledge on how to manage money. I always say that rich is not a function of money. Rich is a function of mentality. Because if rich was just about money, then we wouldn't have NFL players or professional boxers that made millions and millions of dollars that are just working a regular job now. So building rich, being rich, building wealth is all about learning the tools and skill sets to be able to build and maintain it. Um, so that's how I kind of got into this space around financial education and trying to give back to the community.
I love that. Deb, do you have any questions?
Okay, so my question for you is, what do you find to be some of the biggest obstacles when people face trying to grow their net worth or trying to actually build on their finances?
Good question. The number one thing, without question, is just knowledge of where your money is going. I have this saying that I'm a big sports fanatic, and could you imagine? Basketball is one of my favorites. So just imagine a basketball game, professional, high school, whatever, and you watching the teams go up and down, score buckets, play defense, but there's no scoreboard. So you look up, and it's the third quarter. You know it's the third quarter, but you have no clue what the score is. And that's how a lot of people run their finance game, because money is a game. It's not anything other than that. So the first thing is how do you know your score? How are you tracking every cent that goes in and every cent that goes out to make sure you're doing being efficient with your money? Um, and then because once you know how your money is flowing, you can start doing things about um, how to control that spend. And because I'm a big proponent of living within your means, and that's scary to a lot of people. But living within your means doesn't mean not having fun, right? It's about being efficient with the dollar that I am spending, and making sure that, hey, I don't have this recurring subscription to this service that I don't even use anymore, as an example. So the number one thing is to get mastery over how your money is flowing. And there's a number of tools out there to help automate this process. The one I use is an online tool called Empower, EMPOWER.com. You might have seen their commercials, but they have an online platform. You log into it and you configure all your banks, all your insurance, all your investments, any houses, any cars you own. You plug all that stuff into the to that financial tool, and what it does is it logs into all of those institutions and downloads your transactions on a day over day basis. So that's kind of how I manage the process, and that's what I would recommend as step one for anybody trying to get mastery over their situation. Now, inherently in that involves using as little actual cash as possible. So almost every transaction I do is through debit card or through credit card. That way, I don't have to do any manual thing to go plug in. Hey, I spent $7.67 in cash at Walgreens. So that's going to be your first step, because that's how you get visibility into what's happening every day. And that should just be step one, because you can get on top of things like fraud. So if somebody's trying to uh, um, steal your credit card and run charges that you didn't authorize, if you're checking that stuff, you can catch that stuff, and it's much easier to fix it on day one than it is on day 180.
That is big facts. And it's hilarious because I actually laughed. I'm on mute when you're talking. But I laugh because you said empower.com. And I want to say that is who my retirement is through. And so I have a login and I've never thought to use this to help me with other things. So thank you. um, my follow-up question to that is, I know oftentimes people feel discouraged when maybe they don't make what they feel is enough money to even try to manage. What would you say to people who feel like they don't make enough money to track and keep up with things?
Well, if you don't track it, you never gonna have enough money. So regardless of you make enough money, you're never gonna have enough money if you're not tracking it and seeing what you're doing with it on a day over day basis. And people have a inherent idea on how much they spend on different things, but it's a totally different thing to know to the penny versus I feel like I spend $100 a month on groceries. And again, money has nothing to do with managing money has nothing to do with money itself. I mean, like, because I know firsthand janitors, literal janitors, that are millionaires, not because of how much money they make, but over the course of their 20 years, 30 years of being a janitor, they were very efficient with every dollar that they were spending. And then, just like I was saying, you got uh, um, NFL players, Hall of Fame NFL players that have made millions and millions of dollars that are flat broke now. So if you don't get into the mindset of, if I don't manage the money, no matter whether it's small or a lot, you're never going to have money. Because we all have vices and things that we like to do with our spare money, but there's always a way to manage um, that process to where you can start at least seeing some small pockets of money grow. And if you don't feel like you're making enough money, we are in an age where it's not very difficult to get a supplemental income stream. I mean, like, whether that's something like driving DoorDash, and this doesn't have to be a permanent kind of thing, right? You just need to get yourself in a position where you can start moving a little bit differently. So maybe you do something additional for 3 months, for 6 months, a year, just to supplement your income, so you can kind of jumpstart that process. But the most important thing is mastering how the money flow is happening.
I like how you said it doesn't matter how much you make. Basically, you need to just start somewhere and then you can build on that. So I like that. And then the question that I wanted to ask, when it comes to like budgeting and stuff like that, I know you did say one of the tools that you use is online, but is there a way, like maybe there's some people that might be challenged when it comes to like online things? Is there another alternative when it comes to budgeting that they could use?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's you can track it on a piece of paper, and that's going to be sufficient. The problem with not having an automated process, like an online tool or a computerized tool, is that um, uh, it, it's already work enough to do the budgeting on a day-to-day basis. If you have that additional step of having a catalog every transaction manually, it gets really, really it can get really challenging really quick. I mean, like, because think about all the things you buy in one day. You might go to the gas station, you might go to a fast food place, you might go to get some groceries, and then you might have one entertaining thing that happens on a day. So that's four transactions just in that one day. You multiply that out by a week, 4 times 7, that's 28 transactions. So if you're not keeping track of it manually every day, um, you might miss something, and then if you're doing it once a week, you you might have forgot about one or two of those things that you did over the course of a week. So if you are challenged with an online tool, I would at least recommend having a computerized process, like using Microsoft Excel or something like that. But I don't know anybody that doesn't have a phone nowadays. I mean, like, I'm sure there are some people that don't, but most people have a phone. And if you have a phone, it's a smartphone. And if you have a smartphone, you more than likely have access to some type of internet. And that tool is totally free. They don't charge anything for it. So I can't advocate for that enough, just because it makes that process so much easier. But it's not required. The main thing is the philosophy behind categorizing every single transaction that you make.
Thank you.
I agree with that because yeah, I'm in the process of like reworking how I deal with my budget. And I have been the person who has an Excel spreadsheet and I've cataloged everything, but it's time consuming and it's not that fun. And I'm an accountant by day and I like numbers and I still don't like doing it. And so it has fallen by the wayside. And so, like, you're just speaking to the parts of me that I know I have to shed. And I've not looked into Empower yet. I'm gonna have to after we get off of this conversation. But I know that I've been seeking a tool that can help me see what my money is doing. And I know that Excel ain't working no more. And when I've switched recently, the tool that I've been using, I think it's called Honeydew or something like that. It's supposed to help with joint accounts. But even with that, I don't know. Like I know there's a learning curve and things with getting used to a system and things. Do you have any encouragement for like I guess the mindset around getting used to whatever system it is that you do start to use so that you don't get discouraged and let it fall by the wayside?
Yeah, I because and it can fall by the wayside really really quick. So the main thing is having a little bit of discipline around it, and I akin it to, if you work a job where you get a lot of emails. Let's just take this for example. Let's say you get 20 emails a day at your job and you go on vacation for a week or 2 weeks and then you come back and now instead of you having to go through 20 emails you got to go through 200 emails, and just sitting down and doing that could be a daunting task, and it's going to take, as opposed to taking a couple of minutes to go through, now it's going to take 3-4 hours. So the main thing is just ensuring you're staying on top of it is the best way to stay motivated around it. Because if you do a little bit every day, I'm like, it's literally less than 2 to 3 minutes a day. I'm like, so my process is I wake up in the morning and I hit the bathroom, and do my morning shower, brush my teeth, all that kind of stuff. And then when I come out, first thing I do is, okay, what were the transactions that came in yesterday? How should they be categorized? Spend 2 to 5 minutes doing that before I do anything else, and then it's just kind of done. On the weekends, I might allow a day or two to go by, but definitely Monday through Friday, I'm trying to be as diligent as I can and stay on top of that. Because you're right. Once you get a week behind, 2 weeks behind, then the likelihood of you getting a month behind grows exponentially. So the main thing is just to be disciplined about it, and knowing that this is ain't nobody gonna do it for you. If you want to have the money, and more than likely you are having the money, you just letting the money go through your hands. I mean, like I tell a lot of people, think about how much money you've made since you first started making money. Let's just think about that. Most people start working when they're 16, 17. If we just think about that time aspect, almost everybody that's worked since they're 16 or 17 has at least had 100 to 200,000 dollars flow through their hands over the course of their lifetime to when they're 25, 30. It is, and the question becomes, what am I doing with that money? And it's kind of funny because when I first started getting into this, I had back in the day when before streaming services were what they were, I had cable, and it was a whole bunch of cable channels, and I wasn't watching a lot of cable channels, and cable was like $100 a month. And I was sitting back doing the calculation. I was like, well, if it's $100 a month, that's $1,200 a year. Over 10 years, that's $12,000. That's a car, that I was spending on cable that I ain't even watching most of the time because I was playing video games a lot of the time at that point in time in my life. So, I actually cut out cable. I eliminated my cable bill, and just that extra money was just flowing through my hands that I could apply to something else. So it's just being diligent, and that visibility, that diligence brings to bear can allow you to make some really life changing decisions 10 years down the road.
And the thing that I wanted to add to that, and so I saw your mic come off, Deb. I'm just gonna add a little thing. Um, it's funny that you say that you start your morning with looking at your money because I've read and reread a book called We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rogers. I cannot stop talking about this book enough. But one of the 7 daily habits that she encourages is to look at your money first thing in the morning. Because, like you said, if you know what's going on, you can get ahead of things. You know what's happening, you know where you stand, and you know what's coming up. And so you can plan better when you know what's going on versus having to respond because now you're in defense mode. Go ahead, Deb.
Okay. Well, my question was actually, I just recently made a financial a mistake, and I didn't realize it until it was done. Basically, I paid off my car, and since that was the only debt that I had, it uh, decreased my credit score. So could you talk about like any stories of common financial mistakes and how people can overcome them?
Sure, and that's a very common mistake is I eliminated my debt. Why did my credit score go down? Well, they don't have an ability to track any more credit for you, right? So um, uh, one of the one strategy I use, especially around debt, is I use debt for pretty much everything. So um, I have a credit card, and I literally put every single thing I buy on any day on the credit card. Now, the magic to that is I pay that credit card off at the end of the month, so I'm not accruing any interest because the biggest stealers of wealth are interest and taxes. Um, so that's a whole nother conversation, but I make it a point to try and pay as little interest as possible, but I use as much debt as possible. So I keep credit card lines of credit open. I try and increase them at every opportunity I get. Um, but that's a very common misnomer is that is eliminating and closing my credit account has a adverse impact on your credit score. They like to see open lines of credit that you can tap into. Um, um, uh, so that's one common mistake is not using credit the right way. Probably one of the biggest mistakes. The second probably biggest mistake I see is people thinking they don't have enough money to invest. Um, uh, Interest is the biggest impact on building wealth, period. So interest can either work for you in the form of debt, house debt, car debt, but interest can also work for you in the sense of owning a home and the home appreciating a certain percentage year over year, or owning, I'm not a big advocate for everybody learning how to invest in stocks, but I am a big advocate of everybody buying the S&P 500, which is, for those that don't know, the S&P is basically the top 500 companies in the country, and they just keep the top 500. So if a company becomes 501, it rolls off and it rolls in. So if you're buying that, you always have the top 500 companies, and they appreciate. They appreciate in value, which is an interest rate return to your net worth. So the second biggest thing is not understanding how negative interest works versus how positive interest works in the form of assets and appreciation. And then the third biggest mistake people make is not knowing tax efficiency. If you don't know, the tax code is one of the biggest books in the country. I mean, like, there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, probably even thousands of pages allocated to the tax code, and each one of those pages is for a benefit of yours, not to your detriment. So understanding how the tax system works, and why it is that people say billionaires don't pay no taxes. The number one form of revenue for the government are W-2 employees. So when you work a job and you collect the W-2, you already know they taking their taxes off the top before you even get your check. When you get your statement, they say, "Oh, you got paid, you know, $2,000, but we already took, 250 of that for your taxes, and it's over here, and you can have the last 1850." They do that off the top, so you can't be efficient with anything in your taxes. And learning the tax code and how you can take advantage of different things is probably the third biggest mistake. So um, what we've been talking about, seeing your cash flow, learning about positive and negative interest, and then the tax code are probably the three biggest things that can help you avoid financial pitfalls.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And then my question to follow that up would be, Can you tell us how you work with people and help them on their financial journeys?
Well, I I I have a very hands-on approach, and so I take on one-to-one coaching sessions is pretty much how I work, because it's hard for you to just unless you have an aptitude for it to just go search in the internet and get all kinds of great information, because everything that I've learned pretty much over the internet and put into practice in my life. So the information is out there for you to take advantage of. But I also did have a mentor that was kind of planting these things in my head. Hey, you should go read Rich Dad Poor Dad. You should go read The Richest Man in Babylon. Understanding those concepts, being able to bounce some ideas off of him being able to pour into me some philosophy and some financial mentality that I was able to absorb. So I I usually try and allocate if somebody wants to work with me and I can sense they're serious. I'm an open book. I'll give you 30 minutes a week, or an hour every 2 weeks, or an hour a week, depending upon the situation. We have a set time, and you can call in, and we have a virtual meeting, and we go through what are the things that are challenging you, what are some of the philosophies that I can help you try and develop, and go that route. So a lot of one-on-one individual coaching is probably the most effective way that I work.
And then to follow that up with the people that you're working with, what are some of their goals and some of the success stories that you've had?
Everybody has pretty much the same goal. I mean, like, I don't want to be dependent upon having to work for, a living till I'm 70, 80 years old, in order to just live my life. Um, uh, and it's funny you ask about goals. One of my mentees called me 2 days ago, 2 or 3 days ago, and she called me up and she was like, "Man, I just wanted to thank you. I've been," and I hadn't talked to her for maybe a month or so, but I told her about Empower, and she went on Empower, and it can be a daunting task when you first get into Empower, especially if you're going to go back and historically categorize everything that you've done. But she was going through that process of going back, for a year's worth of transactions to categorize them, and so she could get a physical picture of where her money's been going, and it was a super eye-opening experience for her. She was like, "Man, I've been spending thousands of dollars on this, and we ain't even using that. We've been spending hundreds of dollars over here." And she found a bucket of a couple of thousands dollars that she spent just over the last year. That, man, if I would have been doing something, if I would have just had this level of visibility, I would have done something different with that money. And then, if we talk about putting that money into something that's accruing interest, if you had that $5,000, I'm like, just this year alone, the S&P has accumulated, I believe, is 23% in positive returns. So the way I think about that is, if you had $5,000, or let's make it easy, a little bit easier for me, $1,000 just sitting in that vehicle, that would have accumulated 250 additional dollars that would be there. So you would have 1250 in that account now, as opposed to just 1,000. And that's just 1 year, and you apply the numbers bigger and bigger. So if it was 10,000, you would have $1,250. So once you start seeing that, you're like, man, how much money can I shove into this vehicle that can be growing? And that's the realization that she had literally just this week, around having that level of visibility. I've had situations where I've had people that have lost their job, and they were lucky enough to have had a fair amount of money on the side. And when I say fair, I mean, like, maybe $100,000 sitting on the side. It might have came through an inheritance or something like that. But they had lost their job, and they were freaking out. So they called me up and they were like, "Man, what do you think I should do?" And I gave them some advice on what they should do about something that basically gives a 1% return a month. So if they had $100,000 every month, they were getting 1,250 bucks, um, and they were keeping that $100,000. So that person followed that advice, and they were able to go. 3 or 4 months without, have like being able to live their life without worrying about where the money's coming from. And that led them to take a step back and be like, you know what, this is working. I can take more time. So they got to sit back and think about, what do I really want to do? And they were actually out of work for maybe a year and a half, just living off of that strategy. So they allowed them to kind of take their time with what they really wanted to do, and when they got back into the workforce, had a completely different mindset. And it's kind of interesting because I've had situations where um, people come to me for advice and they do the exact opposite of what I'm asking them to, and they might have had a large sum of money and then it's all gone within the period of a year or two. So I have one client that ran out of money in a year, and I have another client that lived off of their money for a year, and after that year was over, they actually had more money than what they started with. So it's a very it's a very real and tangible thing when you start talking about interest and appreciation and getting dividends from stocks. And uh, so those are probably my biggest success stories. That makes me feel, especially the person that could go a year and a half trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing with their life without having to worry about where the groceries are going to come from, how I'm pay the light bill, how I'm pay the mortgage, et cetera, et
It sounds like a dream. I ain't gonna hold you.
cetera.
Deb, go ahead.
I was gonna say thank you so much for a lot of these mind-opening things that you have spoken on, these tips. We definitely appreciate you taking the time to give us some of these tools that we could use.
No, my pleasure. This is kind of my passion here is financial literacy, and I'd love to be in a place where I could do this without having to charge people money. It's so funny, most of the people that need the advice are people don't have a lot of disposable income to be able to spend on getting that advice. So, one of my goals is to try and set up a nonprofit so we can do this at scale.
I love that. And I've loved this conversation. And I am in the middle of reading The Richest Man in Babylon because our last guest also mentioned this book. So I am halfway through it. I set up an account this week to pay myself. So I am taking the steps and, looking at my numbers. And I want listeners, I want y'all to do the same thing.
You can't win the game if you don't know the score.
Listen, and I didn't realize, there's a guy I follow named Ramit, and he has a show on Netflix called How to Get Rich, and he has a conscious spending plan. And I downloaded that puppy, and I put my numbers in yesterday, and I had to get up and walk away from my fixed costs because I wanted to throw up. Because he talks about the percentage of how much you spend on, like, housing and the different things, and it makes it really loud how I have to, even though I've known my numbers to some degree. I don't know them well enough to have made the improvements to get further along than I've gotten. And so these conversations are helpful. The book recommendations are helpful. And then using these tools are helpful because why not let the technology work for you? It exists to help. It already collecting the transactions. Go on and let it figure out how you're spending your money so that you can do better.
There you go.
So,
There
yeah.
you go.
Do you have any final words that you want to leave the people with? I'm going to give them your email. Anybody who wants to contact Kenon for his coaching, reach him at his email, KENON at KDT and that will be in the show notes. Kenon, if you have anything to share with the people, go for it. And then Deb, you too, and then we'll close this thing out.
The only thing I say is nobody's gonna do it for you. This system that we live in is built on turning you into a battery, like the Matrix, and they want you to work until you die. That is literally the goal. And I can't stress enough that if you don't put together plans around how that's not going to be you, you will end up being that. So take 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 charge in your financial literacy, take charge in your financial wellness. Start watching your cash flow, your money in, your money out. Find different ways that you can take advantage. Like you were talking about living. Living is one of the most expensive things that people have. So I got a mortgage like everybody else, but I don't do any of the escrow inside of my mortgage. So I don't pay the taxes through my lender. I don't pay the taxes through the insurance through my lender. I pay all that individually, which does two things. It reduces my monthly payment for my housing. Now I still have to pay that money to the taxes and all that kind of stuff at the end of the year. But that two, three, $4,000 worth of taxes and insurance during the year is now gaining appreciation. So, if it cost me $5,000 in taxes and insurance in a year and it appreciated at 20%, that's that's a couple of $100 that I got in my pocket that I wouldn't been able to get otherwise. So, take on roommates if you need to. I mean, like that's one of the biggest things that a person could do to cut their housing expenses in half if you just take on a roommate. And you don't have to do it forever, right? We just talking about enough. Take on a roommate, drive Uber or Lyft for a 6 month period, and you probably doubled your income in the course of over the course of that 6 months or a year. So you've got to be proactive in your financial picture. Nobody else is going to do it for you.
Well, I just want to again thank you so much for sharing a lot of these tools that we can use. Listeners, if you guys want information, we should have it in the description box below. But I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Coach Yams.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kenon. Thank you, listeners. If you've gotten something of value from this, please like, share, subscribe. We gotta share this information with other people. So please like, share, subscribe. If you want to connect with us, thehealingcornerpodcast.com. And until next time, take care of yourselves.